Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I will be teaching you how to single crochet. First we'll go over the materials you need, then how to make a slip knot and chain, and then how to single crochet. And these are the timestamps for each if you wish to skip ahead. So you're going to need some yarn, a hook, and some stitch markers. Now technically you don't need stitch markers, but I highly recommend them. Otherwise, that's all you need. So now we're at the point where we can start crocheting, so go ahead and get your yarn and your hook ready and let's get started. We are going to start by learning how to make a slip knot, and this is pretty much just your basic knot that you're going to start with for almost every single project. So you'll start by picking up your yarn and you're going to wrap it around your non-dominant hand. So for me, this is my left hand. So I'm going to take the loose end and have it toward my palm, hold it in place, and then take the yarn around your first two fingers and wrap it around so that it creates an X in the front of your first two fingers. Then you'll go ahead and flip your fingers over, and I like to use my pinky to hold this end of the yarn, which is called the working yarn, just to make sure it's in place. This is the tail. I'm just showing you where it is so that you can make sure yours looks the same. And then you will go and pick up your hook and you are going to put it under the first strand of yarn, which I am demonstrating here, hook onto the second strand of yarn, and then pull that underneath the first strand. Now you're going to twist the yarn around your hook, which you can do so by inserting your hook further down just to make sure the yarn is fully on there, and then just twist it around back into the normal way that you were holding. And it should look like this. Now what you're going to do is you're going to grab onto your yarn with your hand that is holding the hook, like so, and you can then pull the yarn off of your fingers. And then you can see there are two loose strands hanging down. You're going to grab onto those two loose strands and pull, and this will form your knot. Then what you're going to do is with those two strands, the one is the tail and then the other is the working yarn that's still attached to the skein of yarn. You're going to pull the working yarn and this will tighten your knot around your hook. Congratulations! Now you officially know how to make a slip knot. The next step with crocheting is something called chaining. And I'm going to be putting the abbreviations on the screen for every single thing that we're doing from here on out. And this is just to get you familiar with the abbreviations of the terms that you're learning. This will help you so much later on. And just so you know, this end of the yarn is called the tail, while this part of the yarn is called the working yarn. And when you're crocheting, make sure your loops go onto this part of your hook, right here. Because as you can see, towards the actual hook part is smaller, and that is not the size you need for your loops. You need this bigger part of the hook to use as the reference size for your loops. Now go ahead and grab onto your working yarn with your other hand while holding the tail with the hand holding the hook. This will just help keep the loop in place. Now keep in mind this might be a little tricky for you to hold like this, but trust me, it'll get easier with practice. Now we are going to do something called yarn over. This is where you take your working yarn and wrap it around your hook from the back, like so. Okay, so once your yarn is wrapped around your hook, this is where we are going to chain. Depending on how you're holding your hook and your yarn, you may need to readjust how you're holding things. I certainly do. I switch my slip knot holding hand to my other hand. But basically you're going to take the yarn that you just yarned over and pull that through the loop that is on your hook, like so. And then make sure your loop goes back onto the thicker part of your hook and you just chained one. And I'm going to demonstrate this again, okay? So you're going to yarn over, so wrap around from the back, and then take your hook and from that yarn over, pull that yarn through the loop already on your hook. And that's another chain. So I'm just going to demonstrate from another angle. So from straight on, you wrap your yarn around and then you take your hook and hook onto that yarn that you wrapped around and pull it through the loop that's already on your hook in order to create a new loop. And then you just do this process over and over and over again for however long you need for whatever project you're making. And this is called chaining. And you can chain however much you want right now because we're just practicing. I'm going to end up chaining 12 and I will show you how to properly count how many chains you have. Now when you're going to count how many chains you have, you'll see that each chain kind of looks like a V. So each V is one chain. And so I will show you closer what that looks like. So this first one, you can kind of see either side of it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then you do not count the loop around your hook. That does not count as a chain. So I only have 9 chains and I want 12. So I'm going to chain 1, 2, 3 more to get to 12. And then I always like to double check my work, so I'm going to count again. So this one right here is 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And again, we do not count the one on the hook. And there you go. Now you know how to make a slip knot and how to chain, and those are the 2 basics you need to start off most projects. Now your chain does not count as your first row, it's simply your foundation. So the next step will be crocheting the first row. And we will be doing something called a single crochet for the first row, and before we even get started, we need to chain 1 more in our foundation chain. So go ahead and yarn over and chain 1 more so that you have 13. And this just allows the yarn to loop around into our first row. So it's normal to chain a few extra than you actually need. Then you're going to want to skip this first chain away from your hook and go into the second chain right here. So once you know which chain you're going to crochet into, you're going to look at the V part of it, and you're only going to crochet into the one side of it. So as you can see here, it's a V, and you're only going to crochet into the top loop of it, which I will show you right here. You're just going to insert into that one end of that V. Then you're going to take your working yarn and you are going to yarn over your hook, just like we did with the chaining. And then at this point, you should have 3 strands of yarn wrapped around your hook. So 1, 2, and then 3, the yarn over. Should all be around your hook right now. Then you're just going to pull through that very first loop, and that is it, so that you only have 2 loops around your hook. Now the next part, you are going to yarn over again, and then pull through both of those loops on your hook. And there you go. You now have just created your very first stitch, and this is called a single crochet. And then you're just going to repeat this process of single crocheting into every single chain along the row. So as you can see here, I go into the next loop, the next chain, and then I yarn over and I pull that loop up through the first loop, and then I yarn over again and I pull that loop through the 2 loops on my hook. And that is a single crochet. And I'm just going to do this all the way down the row. You can do it along with me. And when you insert your hook into the chain and yarn over and pull that first yarn over through the first loop, this is something called pulling up a loop. You will hear this referenced a lot. Pulling up a loop simply means entering into your next stitch, or in this case a chain, yarning over and pulling that yarn over through the stitch or the chain. And then when you finish putting a single crochet in your last chain, this is what your project should look like. And I'm just going to count to make sure I do in fact have 12 stitches, and I do. And so that last one was the 12th stitch, and what I'm going to do is take a stitch marker and put it into that stitch. And I strongly encourage you to do the same, because it's very easy to get confused on the next row what your last stitch is. And technically I should have put the stitch marker on that stitch right when I made it. I just forgot. But it also works counting backwards to make sure which one is the last one. So there you can see I'm putting my stitch marker on, and this will just make it easier for me to crochet the next row. And then as always, double check you have the right number because you'd rather be safe than sorry. And I do, I have 12 stitches. So now, in order to start your next row, we are going to chain 1. So go ahead and take your working yarn, yarn over, and pull that through the loop on your hook. And then you are going to turn your work. You are always going to be working toward the left as a right-handed crocheter. I'm sorry lefties, this doesn't pertain to you. So in order to crochet the second row of single crochets, you're going to skip that first chain away from your hook and you're going to go into the second chain, this V right here. But this time, you're going to go entirely under the V, getting both parts of the V instead of just the one. So you're going to enter in, make sure both parts of the V around your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over again and pull through both loops. I'll demonstrate twice more from different angles. So here you can kind of see a little gap in that stitch. That's where you're going to enter your hook. Make sure the entire V is on your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over again, and pull through both loops. Now a view from the top. This V is the stitch you're going to enter into, and you're going to enter below that V, getting either side of the V, and then you're going to yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over again, and pull through both loops. And then you're just going to continue this process all the way down, and this will be your second row of single crochets completed. And then when you reach the stitch with the stitch marker on it, you can go ahead and remove your stitch marker so that you can crochet into that stitch. And I realized at this point that I forgot to put a stitch marker on in the very beginning again. So I apologize for this, but we can again just count backwards to where the 12th stitch is, and that's where we put our stitch marker. Luckily, since this is just practice, it's not that big of a deal, but I highly recommend getting into the habit of putting a stitch marker onto the very first stitch you crochet, because for bigger projects, it's not going to be as easy to just count backwards. And that's everything you need to know about how to single crochet. I hope this video helped you, and if you liked it, I'd really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. Thanks for watching!